I'm down by the lakes on my way out to the canal, making my photo walk this morning. There's a bit of mist across my local lake. Let me try and I'll get a picture, a sketchbook photograph to start the day. I'm going to look through these trees actually, and there's a natural vignette being formed by the shrubs and the bushes and the trees. Let's see if I can. Some nice reflection as well from the other side of the lake. Here we go, 1/2/5, 3.2, 250 ISO. A sketchbook picture to start the show.
If I stand up on the stage to an audience that's older than 12, and I say, have you ever read the Geographic? And I tell stories of how I used to take the Geographic upstairs at night, and everybody is kind of like, yeah, I remember that. And I go, well, why did you have that reaction? Why did your dad save those copies of National Geographic? And they go, I don't know. And I said, because they celebrate what's right with the world.
That's Dewitt Jones, my guest today. There's, in many ways, a very simple message that holds today's show together. Celebrate what's right with the world. In terms of the message from my guest, Dewitt, at any rate, it's easy to see what's... come on, pups, this way. It's easy to see what's wrong with the world. In fact, most days, I barely need to try. In fact, I don't think I need to at all. A quick glance at the headlines, scroll through social media, and the problems arrive thick and fast. It's like they're riding in on the pinstriped express at double speed. They're obviously real. They're very important, of course. But can I be honest? Of late, perhaps, this has particularly struck me when looking through the news. It's all so bloody exhausting. Steady on, Neil. There's kids in the car. Oh, I know. But, well, look, what if the real act of resilience is to pause long enough to notice what's right? There's a thought for you. Not to ignore all the bad news and the brokenness of the world and broken Britain and all that sort of stuff. Not to live in denial, no, but to recognise the everyday moments of, P-word coming up, possibility. The kindness of a stranger. We so often talk about that, don't we, on our walks? The laughter that bubbles up at those unexpected and completely inappropriate moments. The way a shaft of light, my favourite thing to photograph, finds its way maybe across the living room floor or something. Come on, pups. That's in many ways what today's conversation with my guest is all about. The philosophy of celebrating what's right with the world. Oh, there go the geese. They're flying south, pups, I tell you. It's not a kind of Instagram influencer kind of celebration. Don't worry. Where life looks perfect, untouched, slightly yellow washed with a tint from a preset. No, not that kind of thing. It's far more grounded than that. Think of it like adjusting the exposure on your camera. Thought about this. If you're only focused on the shadows, the whole frame feels dark, but you shift just slightly, and suddenly the details and the highlights appear. Steady, Neil, you're doing tech. You'll get a nosebleed. So today we're joined by somebody who's spent a lifetime helping us to see that way. Dewitt Jones, former National Geographic photographer.
Today on the Photo Walk.
The more I shot, the more I went, I'm going to find it wherever I go. Things to celebrate are going to be there. Always the best pictures were the ones you couldn't plan. He's standing surrounded by these giant cabbages, and he raises one up and he says, "Let me show you my children." Where are you going to stand? Where are you going to put yourself? How are you going to face the world? Do I want to stand in the middle of the darkness? No. I'd like to stand in the light. And I'm sitting there with tears looking at a sunset saying, how could this possibly be? How could this much beauty be in the world?
That's Dewitt Jones, my guest on the Photo Walk show today. Alongside him, I'll be sharing some of your letters, your stories and your thoughts that you've sent in
about life and your adventures with a camera as we walk together. It's a show shaped by you as much as my wonderful guests, which is what makes this time together each week feel so very personal. I'll peek into that mailbag in a moment to see what's coming up, but before that, I'd like to personally thank those who are Patreon members of our community, our extra milers, because your belief in the show, your desire to keep us walking together week after week, that is the why, the how of this podcast and what drives me. Honestly, it is. And every week there's an extra show, actually more than just one extra show available through Patreon, because we have the second part of my conversation with my guests, chats with those in the community, but also this new feature called Reflections, my own take on making pictures and a life behind the lens every single day, Monday through Friday. Thank you also to my sponsor, arthelper.ai. They help you to sell your photos online by making those posts and the mock-ups and the marketing emails for you. Because if you've ever thought, I've got some work, I would like to sell my work, but I do not know where to start, arthelper.ai can help you. They do the tricky bits for you, and you get 30 days free with code PHOTOWALK when you go to arthelper.ai. Right, on the show today, John Kenny is thinking about change and making notes of a morning in his Life Changes notebooks. Christopher Parsons has suggested the best idea for a feature to close out 2025 as we edge ever closer to another year. Can I be the first to wish you a happy too early, Neil? Far too early. All the same, it's a fantastic feature which he will tell you about in his letter soon. Adriano Henney, he's back. He's being careful ordering coffee in Italia. And news about tickets for the Fujikina Photo Festival in London this month. We have the winner from last month's one-word assignment. Actually, an assignment that ran across 2 months in the end. And a new one set by former guest Ibarionex Perello. So, shall we walk? Checklist out. Coffee, check. Garibaldi's, check. Walking boots, check. Some spare film, maybe an extra SD card, yep, check. And if you're walking with this show after 11 a.m, can I just check that you've not taken any cappucino with you? Let's walk.
The letters, the emails and the comments you leave gives our community a real uniqueness. Your thoughts about walking and creativity and photography provides a very welcome respite from the noise of this world. And I'll tell you what, the theme of today, I think celebrating what's right with the world, fits so well into that. If you'd like to send in some pictures, some stories from your walks, then I'd love to hear from you. The email address for your letters is stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. If you're sending pictures, if you can resize to 2,500 pixels wide, you're an absolute star. Otherwise, don't worry. I'll do the heavy lifting for you. No questions asked. Right, where do we start? An important letter, actually, for anybody who's looked at their life and thought, did I make the right decision? Oh, that's a big subject, Neil. Or more colloquially speaking, I suppose like me, who's occasionally peered through their half-closed fingers at the life of a morning and thought, what the fuck have I done? Neil, what's the matter with your language this morning? You're such a nice boy usually, I know. I know. I'll have a word with myself when I get back with a nice warm cup of tea. It's chilly this morning. The autumnal feel, there's a bit of mist, but not so much that I can really capitalise on it. I was hoping, because I set out very early this morning, that I'd get some good mist, but no hearty mist here. But Scotland, well, there's usually some good mist of a morning. So yes, a very important letter. It's from the publican of Perfect Light, otherwise known as John Kenny, our friend, of course. Hi, Neil. There's something I thought I would share after hearing you mention a similar doubt I have. A doubt which I hope didn't linger in the face of all that you've achieved. The community you've built, the people and the podcast has no doubt helped. Careful, John. I may have to reach for that sofa of flattery. It's very kind of you to say, but it doesn't stop me peering through those half-closed fingers. Don't worry, no more language. I'm a little behind, says John, in catching up with episodes right now. And the reason? 3 question marks. Well, it's due to a complete change in the routine of my own work life following the closure of my pub's kitchen. Just a bit of backstory here. John owns a pub, has done for a while now, in England land, and he's a damn fine publican too, I hear. Well, says the publican at perfect light, with no potatoes to put through the rumbler. Is that what the machine's called, the rumbler? Sounds like a wrestler, the rumbler. I've lost the space in the week that affords me a few hours of being able to listen whilst working. Now, every month for the past year, as I brought the books... Oh, the books, John. Oh, I feel your pain. As I brought the books up to date, it's been a struggle to maintain optimism and find areas to reduce costs. Being self-employed, I'm sure you're familiar with the pressure when there's nowhere to look for help. Oh, John, kindred spirit. But I'm going to be flippant at this point. As I do wildly nod in agreement to you, I've considered bringing back that sandpit that the boys used to have in the back garden when they were much younger. I had no idea at the time, John, just how useful it might have been for sticking my head into it like an ostrich. Anyway, says John, I thought that reading a book called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker might provide some assistance. Well, it's sleeping for starters, which is important. And in one respect it did, as I found it quite hard going, and I'd fall asleep in the process of just reading it. But actually, it is an interesting book. Lots of research referenced throughout. One of the things discussed is the importance of sleep when it comes to problem solving. It seems that certain stages of sleep have different effects on parts of the brain that are used for different processes. It appears that our brains try to deal with complex problems in our subconscious, actually, while we're sleeping. I think this is possibly why writing in the morning is something that you find works well for you, because the mind has ordered the stuff that you want to write about come the morning. John, I think you're onto something here. I think the book's onto something. The mornings for me, they're certainly the most productive creatively. One of the suggestions in the book is to keep a notepad beside your bed in case your mind comes up with something and offers it to your subconscious mind first thing of a morning. We all know you have to be quick to retain the first thing that comes into your head at that time of day, so keep a notebook there with a fully loaded biro. As we learned from the Extra Mile, was it the Extra Mile I talked about this on? I'm pretty sure it was. The biro, invented by Mr. Biro, a Hungarian, yes, in Budapest, I think. See, as I said then, we'd still all be writing in pencil if it weren't for Mr. Biro. The reason I wanted to share this rather long email of thoughts is because you've referenced a few times about seeing your peers start to retire with nice generous corporate pensions that the self-employed can only dream about. In half jest, I know. I'm not sure it is in half jest, John. However, this is something I personally also wrestled with over the past year, as my pub business has sadly gone into decline. Would I have been better off staying in the corporate world with Lloyd's, well-paid job, previous employer, challenging job, but the thought of looking back on a life and only seeing spreadsheets, well, it wasn't really for me. The link between these is that one morning back in 2024, the note I wrote in the book by my bedside, as written, reads, "We're wrong to judge success just by the money. We get to work with family and enjoy the time that we spend together." I still stand, says John, by this, having taken a second, possibly third, counting my tenuous photography business, job, just to try and keep ahead of bills. This, Neil, is a very clumsy way of me trying to say that I hope you find it easier each year to silence those whispers as your photo walk project and your community builds. Whilst we can reason that material rewards aren't as important as spiritual fulfillment, well, it can certainly be hard in the face of any new Leica release. Hope it makes sense. John, a.k.a. Publican of Perfect Light. John, it does make sense. Thank you for this. Your line about how we're wrong to judge success just by the money, it did have me nodding, like I'd had my thoughts validated. I think that's something so many of us wrestle with, whether it's pubs or photography or any kind of, I'm speaking really to the self-employed at this moment, I know. And yes, I do know those whispers you mentioned, but as you remind us, there is something priceless about working with family. Having said this, of course, working with family isn't just the domain of the self-employed. But as for Leica, well, I generally have to put my fingers in my ears and close my eyes, John, every time there is a new release, and sing the La La song. La 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 la, la la la, not listening, la 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 la, in a kind of maniacal fashion. I find that helps me forget about anything starting with the letter L. Just ahead of my conversation with Dewitt Jones today, something following last week's extra miler travel log. Each Monday now there's a reflections piece. It's a short 6 to 10 minutes episode with some thoughts to kick off the week. And this week, the feature was called Expertise. Now, we put it on the Photo Walk channel on a Monday as well as the Extra Mile. But then during the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you get an extra reflection every single morning on the Extra Mile channel. And last week, it was a travel log, actually. There go the ducks. Come on, pups. Oh, he's responsible. No, stop rubbing yourself in stuff. Oh, honestly. Shower. It's a shower when you get back. Last week then, yes, a travel log, and we started with a feature about travelling light, which in my case is always an X100V these days, and a spare pair of undies. And then for the extra mile, as the journey continued, on Tuesday we went to Cologne, Wednesday we were in Milan, and Thursday in Budapest. And now in Milan, the Reflections travel log seemed to have a distinct foodie feel to it. Truth be told, I think the entire week did, but particularly in Milan, where I had the best carbonara in the world. But the thoughts about food included the fact that you should never drink cappuccino after 11 a.m. in Italia. It's simply not done. And if you do try to order it, well, you don't want to know what happens. And Adriano Henney, who speaks Italiano and knows etiquette there, sent something in on the back of that. I enjoyed your reflections piece today, especially the segment explaining coffee etiquette in Italia. It reminded me of a dinner in 1998. My goodness, your knowledge is good, or your memory is good. With a group of 8 colleagues, all attending a company meeting in Rome. So you can play with the Italian language, as I suggested in that extra mile piece. It's just a wonderful language. It doesn't matter if you don't even get it right. It's kind of like, well, I think I described it as like playing with your food. It is a wonderful language. Oh, really. We were sitting outside at a restaurant in Piazza Navona, just in front of Bernini's magnificent Fontana di Quattro Fiumi. And having consumed a wonderful meal, not including spaghetti alla carbonara, it was time for coffee. A number of the group declined the rocket-fueled espresso, preferring to get a good night's sleep. Some had a decaf, and I had my usual double espresso, see? You know coffee. Then it came to my boss, who put his hand up and said, I've got to do a boss voice now. I think I'll have a cappuccino, please. Italy practically stopped, Neil. I felt a cold shiver go down my spine as I saw the waiter give me, the only Italian speaker in the group, a lingering, pained look, which could only be interpreted as, what the fiumi? Reluctantly, and after I explained, well, he's English, he doesn't understand, in Italian, of course, the waiter brought him his cappuccino. Doubtless I should expect Adriano, he just threw it onto the table and it spilled everywhere. It was down to me to explain to the group what all the fuss was about. Cappuccino is simply not done after 11 a.m. A number of us still meet every month for a boys' beer and banter, and they always look at me and have a good old laugh recalling that meal when it comes to ordering coffee at the end of the meal. The episode clearly had a lasting impact. Thought that might amuse you. It did, and I thought actually I'd use it on not just the extra mile, but here, because I like the story, and I think there's just enough. Well, why can't you drink cappuccino after 11 o'clock about the whole thing? That air of mystery about it, that it was worth a mention. Now, somebody who would never order cappuccino after 11 a.m. is my guest Dewitt Jones. This is a very tenuous link. In fact, on Molokai, a Hawaiian island where he lives, I think that the pog juice just comes with extra ice, doesn't it? And you can drink it any time of the day or night. Dewitt Jones is a former National Geographic photographer whose pictures, his films have inspired millions. But it's his philosophy that really does linger with people, I think. And that's what caught my eye too after being reintroduced to him. Celebrate what's right with the world. Celebrate what's right with the world. Fantastic. In this conversation, he shares the stories behind his travels, the lessons photography has taught him, and why choosing to see possibility over despair can change the way we live. 2 parts today, with a third on the extra mile. Here's Dewitt Jones.
Dewitt, I do want to start with 6 words, and you won't be surprised by them, I'm sure. Celebrate what's right with the world. We'll dig into those words quite a lot over the next half hour or so, but it must be hard to convince people to embrace them sometimes, because I mentioned this at tea time today. I said, it's often asked, who are you speaking to? Have you got an interview this afternoon? My kids will ask. And I'll say, yeah, and I told them about you. And I talked about celebrate what's right with the world. And the older one was a bit huffy, and he went, oh, that must be difficult for some people. And it must be a wall you do find.
Yes and no, Neil. The interesting part of it is that if I just said, let's all celebrate what's right with the world, I'm sure I would get the same reaction that your kids gave you. But if I stand up on the stage to an audience that's older than 12, and I say, have you ever read the Geographic? And I tell stories of how I used to take the Geographic upstairs at night, and my father told me to turn out the light, and I'd turn it back on. And everybody is kind of like, yeah, I remember that. And I go, well, why did you have that reaction? Why did your dad save those copies of National Geographic? And they go, I don't know. And I said, because they celebrate what's right with the world. You love reading it. You read that and you feel like, I'm proud to be a member of the human race, rather than I'm sad to be a member of the human race, And even if they're discussing something like global warming, you go, yeah, we can do this. We can do this. And you look at the pictures and you look at the little bit of science that they give you and whatever, and you go, Jesus, it's an incredible world out there.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how much the audiences want to do that. If you give them permission, you see people going, oh God, I'd love to do that, but I can't do that because my life sucks. Why does your life suck? Well, they upped the price of something at Kmart. And you go, if that's the horizon you're looking at, then you deserve to be depressed. Raise your eyes, And the Geographic doesn't have that as a motto. I gave that to the Geographic as a motto because that's what I believed, but they did have it as a motto in the sense that you knew who you were shooting for.
Yeah.
And you weren't shooting for Time, and you weren't shooting for Newsweek, and you brought back pictures that celebrated what's right with the world. They never said it, but if you brought back pictures that were horrifying, you weren't going to get very far with it. Even if you were doing something that was painful, it should be beautiful and painful. So I didn't have that at the beginning. I just went out and shot for them. But I shot with that eye. And the more I did, the more the world just opened up for me. I would see that. I would see things that we were celebrating.
I always think of National Geo. There's a part of me that thinks of it as the Attenborough kind of feeling. And,
yes.
and Nat Geo definitely supplies that. And it was lovely listening to you and watching that TEDx talk in particular. We had a very similar childhood experience, you and I. Although mine wasn't with trying to read the National Geo under the covers with a torch and your father coming in and saying, "Turn that light off." Mine was the medium of sound and listening to radio. But it was very similar. It meant that it carved out my interests in creative life. All I wanted to do each night at sleep time was listen to the world services like ABC and the BBC and Radio Luxembourg and stuff like that. And that beautiful creativity that's forged very early on in somebody's life is a wonderful thing, isn't it?
It is. And I couldn't help. I mean, after a while, I didn't even care where they sent me. In the beginning, I was wrestling with what stories were coming up and trying to get into position to have the one I wanted. The more I shot, the more I went, I'm going to find it wherever I go. Things to celebrate are going to be there. And always the best pictures were the ones you couldn't plan. They may have sent you out with a list of you have to shoot this particular monument or you have to go to this particular museum or whatever, but that's not going to be your great picture. Your great picture is going to come from your peripheral vision and you turn around and go, there it is. There it is.
Yeah.
And the interactions, some of which got on the film and some of which didn't, with the people, the ones that changed your life, came wherever I went. I wanted to go to Alaska for years. I've been to Alaska many times, but I wanted to go. And when I got there, within days, I realized it wasn't my place. It was a beautiful place. I thought it was glorious and beautiful, but it wasn't my place. I came to the island of Molokai, where I've lived for the last 35 years. And before I got out of the airport, I knew it was my place. You felt that mana, that gravitas that I've lived here in other lives, right? As I went on in my career with the Geographic, as I said, it was like, okay, what do you got open? I'll go there. That'll be fun, right? And they were. And people say, well, how do you put people at ease? How do you photograph people? And there are 1,000 ways to do it, and some people are stealth photographers and some people are bullies and all kinds of different ways. I just went with the celebrate what's right, So if I was coming at you right now, I'd say, how long have you had that incredible beard? I love it. It's beautiful. Could I take a picture of your beard? At that point, you're going, oh, you mean this thing that I just... And if you start by celebrating what's right about somebody, show me your cows. Show me your, I had an experience once where I was dead tired, middle of the afternoon. Light is starting to get better. I don't want to shoot. I'm in Gualala, a little town on the coast of California, and all I want to do is go back to my hotel room and crash, right? Having a cup of coffee, I pick up the local newspaper, and there's a story about a man named Oli something. Oli was his first name, I remember that. And he had just raised a 40-pound cabbage. Well, that's the kind of thing that I would take after in the Geographic in this story about the north coast of California. And I went, that's the last thing in the world I want to do is go shoot this guy's cabbage. No. Oh, damn it. I'm being paid. So I drag myself into my car and I drive. Actually, I called Oli and he said, yeah, come on out. So I drive to his little farm. He lived by himself, wrinkly faced guy. And he's standing surrounded by these giant cabbages. And he raises one up and he says, let me show you my children. I was just like, all right, I give up. Here, how could I be blessed with getting to meet Oli, right? An hour and a half later, I left with a bunch of good pictures and a 20-pound cabbage in the back of my car because he wouldn't go if he didn't give me one.
Cabbage.
So I'm predisposed to say I can find it. I turn on the news and I can find all kinds of things to be depressed about. But honestly, Neil, in my day, going through my life, I've never been shot at. I've never had people steal me in the middle of the night. I've never, the things that we worry about on television have not happened to me. Mm-hmm. Do they happen in certain places in the world? Mm-hmm. Yes, they do. But the majority of the world lives in relative peace with people getting up in the morning and trying to raise their family and trying to get enough money to stay alive and trying to be good to other people. They don't usually go out and just beat on other people, the majority of people in the world. So I'm going to keep doing that and trying to spread that word.
Were you ever drawn at all to some of those more difficult stories to cover? Maybe conflict areas. Was there part of you that thought, I'd like to give that I'm not sure. Do I want to?
I didn't want to. I could have, but first of all, I didn't want to get shot at. That seemed like a dumb thing to do. I mean, I have photographed people in pain. I've photographed people in deep sorrow for the loss of a child or the loss of a loved one, or, because they were hurt or bullied or things like that. But I never had any great desire to be a war photographer. I've said to people, the yin yang symbol with half dark, half light, little bit of dark in the light, little bit of light in the dark, right? Yeah. So, and I think that's been around for, probably at least tens of thousands of years. And it's probably pretty right. There's probably about half the world, half dark and half light, a little bit of light in the dark, a little bit. So where are you going to stand? Where are you going to put yourself? Yeah. How are you going to face the world? Do I want to stand in the middle of the darkness? No, I don't. I'd like to stand in the light. As a Pollyanna, no. I understand that there are a lot of things that are wrong with the world, but if I get to choose in this tiny, brief time that I'm here to put something out in the world and to surround myself with something, I'll take beauty and light and joy. Thank you. There'll be enough sadness in my life. Sadness will find me.
I'm sort of relieved. I'm not sure that's the right word, actually, but kind of relieved to hear, though, that there are those days where you get up where you think, I just don't want to be doing a cabbage, because there's part of me that when I was learning more about you, I thought, well, this sounds like somebody who always wants to turn up, who always wants to be there, who will. And there was a part in that film, actually, the TEDx film, where you went to photograph a field of dandelions and didn't want to do it on the first day, and the next day they'd all turn into puffballs. But then you still manage to make the puffballs look different and exciting. But it is kind of relieving that you don't necessarily want to be somewhere immediately, but you will then go and find it.
Neil, it's based on the idea that I think there is beauty everywhere. I don't think it's in the eye of the beholder. I think it's in the thing. That gets into a much more metaphysical discussion, which we could do if we want to. But basically, and the puffball picture is a good example of it.
Yeah.
I could have gone back and said, I don't want puffballs. I'm not interested, and walked away. And there's a part of me that said, I've had it happen too many times. There's something here. Look again. Try a different angle. Try a different approach. Whether that's with a photograph or a friendship, it's the same thing. And that's why I talk about there's more than one right answer. Do I always get the right one? No, I don't. There's a lot of time when life sucks. But I have a sort of a bedrock belief that there is more than one right answer. So if it's not working for me, let's try it again. That has been so ingrained in me, not in a Pollyanna way, but in a way that I've had it reinforced by so many things that I've done, that's how I approach the world.
Well, you cross the road a lot. That's what I call it. It's the style I call crossing the road. You get a picture, that looks fab. I wonder what it looks like from over there. And I know it's such a basic premise of photography, but so many photographers don't do it.
Well, so many people don't do it in their life. They search for one right answer. They search for their passion, as if something's going to come down and they're going to be a potter for the rest of their life, or something that's going to be, they're struck by God and they'll find something they want to do every day for the rest of their life. Good luck. There are only 6 people who got to do that. There are people who have, my wife is a writer too, and she wrote a wonderful piece on passionettes. She said, that's really what most people have. They have passionettes. Passionettes. They get involved in when my son was 12, it was comic books. When he was 16, it was basketball. When he was 25, it was movies. He'd pick something up and it'd blow his mind and it'd get him all excited. He'd have it for a while, drift away, and something else would come in. If I look at my life, you could say that photography has been a passion for me, but there are so many different kinds of photography that I've done where one gets a little boring, and then you discover Polaroid transfers or something, and you're off on that. You continue to be an artistic person. You continue to be a creative person. But I don't know that there are not many people who get a passion, and it's their consuming passion their whole life.
Well, were your passionettes then things like film directing, or would they be passions too?
Film directing didn't really work for me because I thought I would be a filmmaker, but making film is much too communal. There are too many people involved, and I'm not a big people person. I'm way more of a loner, and I like to be able to make decisions and follow them quickly, right? And I could do that as a geographic photographer. What's the story? I know what the story is. I get to tell it. That's what we get, right? I didn't have to go to a board and talk about it. I didn't have to go and ask for more money to make it happen. I just did it. And I had basically one job where I worked for another person for about 2 years, and that taught me that I never wanted to do it again. And you could say I worked for the Geographic, but mostly they just said, we want you to do a story on Madagascar. It's that way. Go. Come back with it. Don't come back without it, because we won't send you out again, but just go. What's my budget? I don't care. Get it done. How much film do I use? However much you need. Go, please. It's that way. That's how they do it. Unbelievable. I loved it.
Do you remember the day that you got your first gig?
It was terrifying and incredibly exciting. And I had been working on a movie that I was going to make on my own on John Muir, the conservationist. And I was in Yosemite Valley, and I was out in front of the visitor center. And out of the visitor center came a guy with a geographic camera bag. There was a very distinctive bag at that time that all photographers used. And I said, hey, are you working for the Geographic? And he said, yeah, I am. And I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm doing an article on John Muir. And I went, oh, God. I said, are you the writer or the photographer? He said, I'm the writer. He said, I don't think they have a photographer yet. And I had connected with the Geographic in the Japanese kayak trip that I talked about that you may have heard about, but I'm not going to go through that story. But anyway, I knew people there. And I went into the visitor center. There was a payphone there. I had a bunch of quarters, and I called Bob Gilka, the head of the photography department, told him that I was there. I was in Yosemite. I'd studied John Muir for 6 months. I should have the story. And he said, yeah, bring some stuff. Come back to Washington. I'll send you a ticket. We'll talk about it. I had about 50 rolls of slides that I had taken up to that point in my professional life. I knew how to make movies, but I didn't know much about stills. And I get on a plane and I go back to Washington, and I am scared shitless. And I thought, I've really done it now. I've gotten myself so far beyond. And I kept thinking, how am I going to prove myself? How the hell am I going to prove myself? These are the best photographers in the world. And he calls me into his office. And I don't know if you've ever heard of anything about Bob Gilka, but he was kind of like a General Patton. He was very gruff. He had a mat outside his office that said, wipe your knees before entering.
Oh my word.
just sitting there, right? So, but he also had a damned heart of gold, and he would fight for you if you were doing good work. But he demanded good work. So I go into his office, and he goes, he's writing, and he goes like that, and sit down, right? So I sat down. And then he wrote some more. And then he looked at me and he said, Jones, if you shoot for the Geographic and I've just hired you, you're very good. You don't have to prove yourself. And I go, I'm sorry. What are you saying to me? That's all I've been thinking about for the last 2,000 miles of travel, right? To get to him. And then he looked up again and he said, but by God, every day you had better improve yourself. Completely blew my mind for two reasons. One is that he said, I'm really good, or he wouldn't have hired me. But he also said, don't compete with all the other photographers. I hired you for your eyes. You're the only one that has them. Nobody else has your eyes. So this is not a competitive sport. What I want you to do is every day go out and get better. I grew up with big, thick glasses. I was too heavy. I was not great in social life, till I got to high school. I'm not a very good competitor. And he just gave me this magic feather that said, screw it. Don't even think about it. Don't think about these other photographers. Don't try and compete with them. You don't have their eyes. If I sent you both to shoot the same pot on a table, yes, you can compete over that, but I'm not doing that. I'm telling you to go out and tell your story the way you do it. It was one of the great teachings that I ever got from anybody, and I took it and ran with it. I didn't think about any of the other. I got to know them all, but I didn't think about competing with any of the other photographers there.
Isn't that just the perfect suggestion for so many photographers now who worry about comparison? And social media hasn't made that any easier, obviously.
No, it's made it worse. But and I have preached that to so many people, both in some of the talks I've given, but in some of the talks I've given to kids about photography, young people about photography, is saying, just stop. You were going to break yourself over trying to compete with people that you don't have their eyes. You're never going to see that. In fact, go and celebrate it. Thank God that guy's out there taking those pictures, because you can't do it. But you can do what you can do. What is that, I look at my pictures. I look at guys who who are war photographers, and I'm ripped apart by the depth of feeling and the beauty in the shots. And I go, even if I was there, I couldn't do it. That's not how I see. And I look over my pictures, and they do celebrate what's right with the world, whether it's a picture of a hibiscus in my front garden, or whether it's a picture of beautiful landscape, or whether it's a face. They're all positive. That's the way I see.
And Dewitt Jones is back shortly. Pups, look. Come on, here, look. Come on, put yourself in the water. It's freezing, I'm sure. No? Even you're not daft enough this time of a morning. He normally goes straight in for it's coming up to that time of year where he's thinking, no, I'm not doing water. What do you think I am? A cold water immersion swimmer, or whatever they're called. Friends of ours have just come back from cruising in Norway, actually. Beautiful fjord cruising. And Michael said, our friend said, I did try dipping myself in the water. It was so cold. I don't think the fjords probably ever really warm up, do they, in Norway? I shouldn't think. And he said there was a lady also on the cruise who was swimming that day, and she just went off. And she was very happy swimming. But then she swims in the lochs of Scotland all the time. And our Scottish 2 weeks starts, well, if you're listening to this on the day of release, as I say, it starts over the weekend. We're welcoming our first guests into the barn. And every year, I think, we've said, we must go swimming. And then forgotten very quickly about it, as probably day one comes along. What's the matter, pups? Do you want one of these? Go on, then. Have a treat. Where are they? Here they are. Breakfast. There we go. A bit of ASMR. One more. I can't believe you rubbed yourself in something. That's disgusting. Honestly. You get no pleasure from the shower when you get back. You must know it's coming. Come on. Now, we are only but a few short weeks until we hit 500 episodes. I know, the 500th, which I think is a fairly big milestone, actually. Go me. Given that most podcasts don't make it past 7, or I think 9 is the current number that's been given. Maybe that average has moved up. It's that magic number that podcasters get to, where they either get past, kick on through and keep going, or that's it. They hit the wall, a runner's wall of sorts, a podcaster's wall. I do have a special episode for that 500, as a number of photo walkers made the pilgrimage to one of our favourite walks, Greenham Common in Berkshireville, close to where I live with Sir Barkalot and the family. And we all go for a walk and a talk and a walk. We share stories, and I ask people to rummage in the lens pouch of questions for randomised quick-fire questions about their life behind the lens. You'll find a real talented bunch of folk on that show. I can promise you that. Just as an NB, a note beside, it's actually a bit strange. But Barney, what's the matter? What are you growling? I know you didn't attend that walk, did you? Because you find crowds a little bit daunting. I know it seems the perfect time to take you out, but Barney and other guests, when we're walking, as you found out before, come on then. Look, you're gonna have Keith, resident dog trainer, telling me that I'm just doing what you say. When you growl slightly or woof, then you get a treat. Keith would tell me off for that. Keith, don't listen to this bit. Where were we? Yes, sometimes when we're walking together, me and Barnes and other people, he's a bit, come on, give me attention. So that particular day, with a whole tranche of us walking, I thought it might be easier that he went and spent the day with his girlfriend Wendy. He did turn up. He'd made a personal appearance right at the start, had a couple of photos, signed a couple of paw prints, then off he went. Anyway, the big 500 is coming up, and I'll be walking with those who listen to the show, those who are extra milers, and those who are just able to come along, in that we have a truly international show. It was very hard to find a place where everybody could attend. In particular, Christopher Parsons, a.k.a. the learned Lord Parsons of Pixelshire. It's quite fun now, by the way, because we've been going for this... Well, for 5 years, 6, coming up to 6, I can't count, 500 episodes. I can't count that bit, nearly 500. That, because we have so many what I might call regulars, it's like being back at the pub, isn't it, John? That you've now earned yourself show monikers. And Christopher Parsons is the learned Lord Parsons of Pixelshire. He wasn't able to come along, and for very good reason. He's in Canada land. Pixelshire, as everybody knows, is obviously in Canada. Toronto, to be precise. Howdy, Neil. You're nearly there, then. Congratulations. 500 episodes coming up. I wish I could have joined the celebratory walk for the recording, but, my private jet wasn't available at the time. Must have been in the shop. Perhaps for episode 1000, your other listener can send theirs around to pick up a few of us. Your choice of destination, clearly. That said, I do have a teeny tiny editorial note. This sounds like I'm in trouble. No, Barnes, no, this is an important part of the letter. Back on episode 300, you promised the 500th would be in, well, Copenhagen, Paris, or my place, Toronto. Since another venue was found, I can only conclude that where the walk occurred was in fact superior to Copenhagen, Paris and Toronto, which proves that the best places to make images are always just around the corner. I love the way you tied that in with one of our show philosophies. Still, if you ever do swing through Toronto, I'll happily show you around while trying to demonstrate that my corners are actually the best. Jokes aside, congratulations again for celebrating photography and photographers in your uniquely generous way. The time you invest in cultivating this community of kindness speaks volumes about your generous and socially minded spirit. Nurse the screens, or at least the sofa of flattery. I did want to offer an idea for perhaps early next year. It might be interesting if members, listeners of the show contributed their favourite singular image they made in 2025 and provided a brief explanation for why. These pictures, I don't know, they could be due to a technical aspect, maybe capturing a meaningful life moment, recording a major trip, or something that just tickled their fancy. And it would have the added benefit of pushing us all to revisit the work we've made through the last year, which is probably good for us all. Anyways, cheers, Chris, aka the learned Lord Parsons of Pixelshire. Chris, I shall link to your glass, etc. on the show page today. I'm in awe of your memory, I have to say, though you did provide proof that I said what I said in an email. You're right, I did promise those places. You obviously have a much better filing system than I, so henceforth, I am putting you in charge of the, what floor would this be? The 185th floor at Photo Walk Towers, which is where all the filing and the fact-checking is done. I think you're perfect for this job. Just make sure you Just make sure you keep the water fountain topped up and don't let anybody abuse the photocopier. It's a floor that I obviously don't visit very often, but I promise to come by and say hello. But Barnes has gone in. Have you gone for a swim? I bet that's chilly. You're right, Barnes. The tail is quivering. But Chris, to show you how much I like your idea, I do have a surprise for you. Go to the website, photowalk.show, where you will find in the top menu bar an item called Photo 25. I've popped up there an invitation to take part in your wonderful idea. There's some rules, because everybody likes a rule, and a quick little vote for an actual feature name, which I will choose when I return back from Scotland at the end of this month. See, I do listen, Chris. I thought that was a fantastic idea, and I do very much agree with you that it can be good to look back at your year and think, do you know what? You know, I've made a couple of corkers this year. I have. I'm really quite pleased with that, and maybe bring back a memory or three. While I mention the website, that's the place to go for the show page, of course. And we have a show page for every single episode. And all the features, the trips that we're doing to, and I'll be talking more about these when I return from Scotland to India, to Mongolia, the camping trip that we have next year. Yes, the camping trip. And a brand new Scottish retreat. There'll be news for all of that on the show, on the website, rather. If you go to all the W's, photowalk.show. Now, something for Fujifilm fans. So actually, you don't have to be. Having said that, I have a way you can win some tickets for the event in London called Fujikina, which I'll come to in a moment. First up, though, we need a new assignment for this month. We ran July's assignment across August as well, thanks to holidays and so on and so forth. So we need a new one for this month. I'll let you know the winner of the flask for last month's in 2 shakes of a dingo's Watsits, as they probably don't say in Australia land. But this month's new one-word assignment, well, your challenge for the month is set by Candid Frames at Ibarionex Perello. We are joined by podcast royalty. What's the word, Ibarionex, that you're going to throw into the ring, please?
The photo walk assignment.
First word that comes to mind is patience.
Is patience in terms of how you technically make a photograph or find a subject, or how long you stay with a subject?
It could be all those things.
All those things.
I know how I kind of apply it in terms of my practical making of a photograph, because it involves a lot of patience.
You're patient.
Yeah. Oh, when I'm making photographs. But, you know, all 3 variations that you created there could apply. So, and if someone can actually make a photograph that kind of reflects what patience may look like, that would be very interesting to see.
How can you evoke patience in a picture?
So there we go, a new word, and it is patience. Have a little patience. Don't sing, Neil. We know the song. What picture can evoke patience for you, or what in a picture can evoke patience? Now, I did think this could be a tricky one to run after Tranquility, because I think there's a bit of crossover. But there is a subtle difference, and what is photography if not nuance? So good luck. Send your pictures to stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. 2,500 pixels, if pos wide, that is. Not just long side, wide. Or full res is fine, and I'll do the heavy lifting for you. A few thoughts about the image to help tell the story is always good. No watermarks, no borders, but do include a link to your social or a website, please, so we can share more of your work. We need a winner, don't we? Winner, chicken dinner for the last couple of months. It's always difficult at this point because everybody's a winner. I know. I wish I could send a flask to every single person. Better still, if that teleporter could, Michael Mixon's teleporter that he sent me about a year and a bit ago now, if I could get that to work, I put new batteries in, Michael, still not working, then I could deliver each one personally. Wouldn't that be good? But this month, or the months just gone, I'm going for Bill Darby's Hillsdale Lake picture from Kansas, which is just the most beautiful picture. The place, says Bill, has a softness to it, a gentleness. We stood on the lakeshore watching the soft prairie light fall towards sunset, the silence palpable. The stillness had an almost physical presence, echoed by the silent skeletal trees. Quietude in the scene and in us. I like that word, quietude. I may be way off point here, Bill. I probably am. I usually am. But I also thought, for that picture that you sent him, I thought of Mark Rothko, a Rothko painting. So the colours, the shapes. If you squint through your half-closed fingers, yes, Neil, perhaps so. No, it does. Have a look at it. It's on the assignments page on photowalk.show. But well done. A flask is on its way to you. Right, ahead of the second part of my chat with Dewitt Jones. Oh, can you hear that in the background? A very quiet morning pinstriped express. That's only a 3-carriager. Pups, just a small one. Yes, ahead of the second part of my chat with Dewitt Jones, a word about Fujikina in London. It's happening on the 18th to 21st and the 25th to 28th of September this month. Actually, I'm there speaking about community in a panel discussion on the 27th. It's all very adult, isn't it? A panel discussion, Neil. Panel discussion. Really? Yeah, me, little old me. What it is? Well, it's a hands-on, joyously inclusive photographic festival in the heart of London, so it is, designed to dismantle, quote here, the gatekeeping of image making with masterclasses, exhibitions, including, by the way, the Magnum one, A World in Colour, photo walks, panel chats, one-to-one expert sessions, and more, welcoming everybody from smartphone shooters to seasoned pros. So there we go, you don't have to just hold a camera with a Fuji flavour. I'll have a link to it on the show page today, and if you'd like to go, there are 10 free general admission tickets for a day of your choosing, which will give away on a first-come, first-served basis. Just follow the link and then pop in Photo Walk Pod. It's important you get pod in here. Photo Walk Pod free, if you'd like one of those free general admissions for a day. If you fancy going to more than just one day, there is a 50% off general admission, unlimited uses, so you can go on whatever day you wish, 50% off. There is I'll have a link on the show page, as I say, and the code to use when you get through is PhotoWalk Pod. Pod is very important here. PhotoWalk Pod 50, and there's 50% off general admission. If you are coming on the 27th, please pop by and say hello. I need all the support I can get. What's that old Morecambe and Wise, the comic duo of the 70s and 80s in the UK? What do they used to say? Thank you for your support. I'll wear it always. Right, back to Dewitt Jones for the second part of our conversation, after which we'll hear today's play-out song, a song to linger a little longer with his thoughts and stories. A song today called Over and Over by Soleil de Fleur, which translated, terrible French, Neil, I'm doing my best, means sun and flowers, which I think fits beautifully into this wondrous uplifting approach that my guest Dewitt Jones today has to picture making and life.
Dewitt, there's some wonderful phrases that you have. Tell me about repeatable miracles and what they are.
If you go down to the ocean and you want to shoot waves, nature goes, just sit back, guys. I got a million of them for you. You will be so tired by the time you leave tonight. And when you leave, I'll tell you, get back here in the morning because I have a million more waves for you.
Yeah.
So you have time to to delve deeply into something that is both glorious and repeating itself. Sometimes, if you said, I go to New England in the fall every year, guess what? Those colors are going to be there for you. You get another chance, in other words. And if you take that chance and really dig into it, I've probably easily shot 100,000 waves here on Molokai because I just love looking at them. And I get to see things that I can't see with my naked eye. When you stop a wave at a 2,000th of a second and you bring it up on your computer screen and you go, oh my God, I had no idea, because it went by like that, right? I just saw this big tumbly thing, and there it is for you to just wallow in. It's pretty cool.
I have a terrible habit of doing complete spoilers on lovely stories. And I feel I should simply now leave a link to the TEDx talk that I've mentioned a few times now. But I do need to mention this. Adam and his juice camera made me broadly smile. A big Cheshire cat grin. It really did. It was the perfect example of reframing. And I mean that mentally as much as physically. I'm not sure if you want to recount the story or whether I should really just put the film on the show page and embed the film and let people go and see it. But it was a glorious moment, wasn't it? And I wonder how often you found yourself being schooled by people you weren't quite expecting to.
Oh, God, so many times. Ole Wilson was an example with the 40-pound cabbage. And certainly Adam. And Adam is now 37 and was at my house last week.
Oh, fantastic.
He is. I lost him for a while, didn't know where he was. Then he resurfaced, and I have become kind of his surrogate father. His father passed away about 10, 12 years ago. Oh. And we talk every week on the phone with this kid who, and he's seen the movie. He's seen my TED Talk. He knows he is Adam of the juice camera. Basically what happened is I'm photographing with a young kid, and he has a plastic camera that has a little straw coming out of it. And he's very, very serious about his photography, and I'm sort of delighting in his seriousness about it. And then finally, he's looking at all my gear piled on my tripod as I frustratingly try and get the last shot of the day in not very good weather, and I'm not very happy. And he looks at me and he says, "Does your camera have juice in it?" And I go, "No." And he goes, "Mine does." Right?
I love that.
Does your camera have juice in it? Do you have passion? Do you have creativity? Do you have energy? Do you have all the things you need to make that camera work? Yeah. And when for a while, I could get those cameras from China. Eventually, somebody broke the mold and I couldn't get them anymore. But I would take them and I'd give them away or sell them to the corporation, and we'd give them away at these meetings. And, I could count 10 or 12 major CEOs who had them on their desk because they loved the story so much. Does your camera have juice in it? And they come up to me, I got to have one of those cameras. You've got to get me one of those.
I'm a bit disappointed now that you said they're not being produced anymore, because I was actually going to go and try and look for a juice camera because I love that story so much. And if you're thinking, I need to just see the film, I will leave a link for the film because you need to see that. I must have watched that moment now more times than I've watched the whole film, but there's definitely a catch in the back of your throat. If there were an extreme close-up, I think we'd see dust in your eye, most definitely. You clearly have a relationship, a very emotional relationship with photography. People in the world, obviously, as well, but it's palpably emotional. And there must have been moments during your career where you've had stories that you've worked on that have left such a strong feeling for you.
I would say that the majority of those moments were with nature, not human beings. There are many strong human connections, many strong photographs of people. But what the Geographic allowed me to do was to spend a lot of time out in wild nature and getting to watch the just unfathomable pageant of beauty that you got to see when you walked out in the Grand Canyon, or you walked out in Arches, or you walked out in Alaska, and it was your job to capture this place in its best light. If you said to, Mount Whitney, celebrate what's right about you, and it said, oh, well, just wait till the sun goes behind me and the God beams are coming up, and and the clouds are breaking, or shoot me at sunset when I just get dusted by the dawn, and I would be there. That would be my job, to show a place in its most celebratory. And those places moved me in my spiritual life to embrace mystery. I guess that would be the easiest way. Do I have a formal religion? No, I don't, because I find most formal religions stories about the world and a supreme being so human-centered and small that they can't possibly embrace what I've seen in wandering around and looking at the world. So no harm, no foul. If they work for you, great. If it gets you closer to being a good human being, I'm all for it, but not for me. And for me, I have had times when, you'd say, I'm looking into the face of God. That's what I would say. And then I would go, no, it's not the God who's up on a cloud with wings. It's just something so magnificent that it just takes me. And I'm sitting there with tears looking at a sunset saying, how could this possibly be? How could this much beauty be in the world? Why would it be here? And so those times have led me to have way more of a spirituality through my photography, and to use my photography to celebrate the beauty of the world. Not asking it to celebrate, but for me celebrating and connecting with the divine through my photography. And as I have gotten older, Neil, a couple of years ago, I had a heart attack. And for a while, all I could do was walk up and down my driveway. That's just as much energy as I had. And I was a little pissed at the beginning. I wanted to get back being way more active. I couldn't do it. So I'm walking down this eighth of a mile strip of blacktop between my gate and the road, back and forth and back and forth. And what I find is that nature has dropped these leaves from the trees above, which I never saw before, never walked on my driveway, drove over my driveway to get out and go somewhere else, dropped them down in patterns that you had to say, no, they did not drop out of the trees and land like that. Somebody, Miro, put them together like that. Picasso put them together in that. No. And then that night, the wind would blow and they'd all be gone. The entire exhibit, which they had placed there before, was gone. But guess what? The next day, they did it again. And I would walk out in the morning and I'd go, okay, do me. Just do it to me. And before I got to the end of the driveway, some pattern of leaves would just cut me apart. They were so incredibly beautiful, and they seemed as if they were not random. Now, I'm not willing to say that some supernatural being placed them there, but however they got there, the beauty that they had struck my heart. And so I began, and they were phenomenally easy to take pictures of. They were on a black background, and you took your iPhone, you went like that, right? They're done. There wasn't anything, I couldn't get underneath them. There was nothing to do. They were perfect. And what I began to see is that I wasn't going to do anything with those pictures. I mean, I could, but I had no intention of it. That they had become for me sort of what I call visual prayers. That it was me just having this response to these four leaves on top of each other and documenting it with a picture that was a little prayer between me and this four leaves. And if you ask me what the prayer was namaste. The prayer was the spirit in me recognizes the spirit in that, click, done. But it changed the way that I photographed when I'm not on assignment anymore, that a lot of it has become visual prayers to me. That I see something that may not be penultimate or the ultimate image, but it's incredibly beautiful and it touches me. And I use my camera to stop and take that moment to say, it's really doing it to me. This is just friggin' beautiful. Click, namaste, move on.
Well, if there isn't a book in waiting called Visual Prayers, really.
I actually have a number of folders with visual prayers in them, and maybe someday I'll do that. But it's been really fun to do it that way.
What's the most important thing that you've learned about creativity? You may, in some respects, have answered this, but a life lesson from a Nat Geo photographer about what they've learned about creativity probably isn't possible to sum up in one paragraph, I know, but there must be something that you've thought, right, that is what's made the difference to me through this glorious career.
Well, I think that I think if there's one thing, and there are a couple ways to go at this in terms of a little pocket aphorism that you could carry with you. It would be that to be creative, you've got to believe that there's more than one right answer, and be as easy as photographers are, even though they don't think about it, as to screw with things, to play with it, to look at it from different angles, to try to be above and below and whatever. And good photographers, whether they can articulate that or not, they just do it, right? That's how they do it. You don't walk into a scene and go click and then leave. That would be ridiculous. You wouldn't even consider yourself a photographer if you did that. But if you let the power of what you do really resonate, that what you're doing is you're looking for another right answer. You liked that first picture. Well, maybe you didn't, but let's assume you did. You liked that first picture. You're still not going to stop. You're going to take another one and try it this way and that way. And that attitude, that stance is what makes you a creative human being. You know, that you're willing to take the risks. They aren't even risks anymore. You just do it. You just look at it from different ways, where somebody else goes, oh, God, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I'll break a rule. Or they get one and they go, I got it. That's the right answer. We're done here. No, a creative person is never done. They're never done screwing with it. That's the joy. That's what makes them an artist. So it seems pretty simple to say that it's about more than one right answer, but that's one way of looking at what is the essence of creativity. And then there has to be something involved in it that lights you up, that fills your cup, that somebody looks at old buildings and they just get lit up by old buildings, or you watch a guy who, I don't know, a 40-pound cabbage. Let me show you my children. They got lit up by that. And you have to have in your psyche the ability to get lit up. If you don't, then it never lights, And if you're always looking for, oh God, it could be a little better. It could, maybe this isn't quite it. If I just went to Paris, it would be better. Instead of saying I can get lit up on my driveway between my gate and the road. The artists tend to do that. They get excited about things. And I'm sure that happened to you. You hear three notes from a musical composition and you go, oh my God, just play that again. Just do it again. It's doing it to me. And then that takes you somewhere. I don't know where it takes you, but it takes you somewhere. The other thing I'd say is that, and all artists aren't like this by a lot, but to me, my mother used to say, begin the day with a full cup. And I think she probably meant coffee for my father, but philosophically, it meant more to me than that. Is that if you work out of an empty cup, you're never there. You're half empty, not half full. And if you can figure out the things that not only fill your cup, but those things get so deep that metaphorically, your cup is filling up from the inside. And you've met people like that. They're just frigging overflowing, right? And I've been like that. I am like that most of my life. It's not that I don't get depressed or down, but most of my life I'm excited and up. And then you just literally overflow. Somebody says, God, you're so generous, Neil. And you go, huh? That's the right answer. You didn't even see it. You couldn't help it, right? I love when I see people like that, where they got their life to where they're just overflowing, and they don't give back as if they're keeping a record. They can't keep it in, or they're crying for joy. It's the same thing. I've had classes where people get really emotional and they start to cry and they go, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I go, no. You're crying for joy. That's overflowing. Don't stop. Learn to do it. I'll lose it looking at a cloud. I'll find myself tearing up and I go, "What the hell is that, Dewitt?" I go, it's just your overflow. You're so full of beauty, you can't hold it in.
Well, I think that's what I saw when I was watching you at the tail end of that wonderful speech. I'm going to ask you a question that might be, it's the last question that I ask in interviews, and it might sort of be related to the last. I think you may have dallianced with the answer that you could be giving to this question. It's a very simple one, though. What's your why?
Well, why photography? Why still photography? If I've looked at that, the thing that I love about it is that it captures, if it's done really well, great photography to me captures, as Bresson said, the decisive moment. The moment that's absolutely everything is together in that frame, that speaks the story better than it could possibly be done. And it freezes it right there, that cherished moment when, the woman is just at the perfect point of, she will never be more beautiful, and she turns in the crowd and she looks, and you captured that moment, and it's always going to be there. I love doing that, whether that's a sunset, whether that's a waterfall, whether that's a wild animal or a person. I love freezing those decisive moments and being able to come back to them and see that they do it to me over and over and over again. A painter does that, but over time, they may capture a decisive moment and put it into paint, and it's the same thing at the end. It's the same woman in this man's mind that he painted, and she turned and she looked, and it just cuts your heart every time you see the painting. But I like that as opposed to a movie, which is in time and moves on. And I'm a visual person, so I like it, even though I've done a lot of writing, I like it more than the writing. I like to say, no, don't make up this image in your mind. I'll show it to you. Here it is. It really existed. So that's why I like photography. And photography, you couldn't be in a better time in the world's history to be a photographer, that it is so easy now to not stumble over all the technology, and just find these moments and look at these kinds of images. Whereas when I started, it was hard. There are two things. One, it was just hard to get the image. And two, it was very hard to interact with the person as you were thinking f-stop, shutter speed. Do I have any more film in the camera? How many shots do I have? Whatever. All of those things that were taking you out of, pulling you back from falling in love through the lens. Now, God, I walked out last night with my iPhone and I looked up, and it's very clear here in Hawaii, and I could see the Milky Way. And I just held up my camera and took a 3-second shot, which was really about 20 shots put together. And there was the Milky Way and Scorpio running down. I mean, it's like, no, that can't happen. But it did. And then I went and got in bed and just lay there looking at this image of Scorpio that I had on my phone. So I like the still image. I like going back to one image that's going to tell a story. I like it better than being a photojournalist. That's been fun, and I've done a lot of stories where you put them together. That's cool, but the individual still image just is what really gets to me. It really has been my pathway to my spiritual life. That it has opened me to being in places where I saw things, whether I was able to capture them or not, that shook me to my core. It showed me, because I was believing that there's more than one right answer, and I was looking at all kinds of things from different angles. It showed me that there was beauty everywhere. it led me to being able to allow the photography to get me to a place and actually take a picture, but also to be able then to stop without my cameras and with just my eyes and my being to resonate with that place. But it was my cameras that got me there. I wouldn't have just gone out and sat there. The photography has got me to so many places like that.
Cars to fix, bills to pay, rooms to clean, meals to make. What a life that we've designed. I'd do it 1,000,000 times with you and never get tired. You're my piece of heaven on earth. Oh, you make it all worth it. You're the reason I keep hitting snooze just to stay next to you. Over and over and over again. Over and over again. Grocery aisle hand in hand. Little world but so grand. Picking up the bread and wine like we've done 1,000,000 times before. And I never get tired, 'cause you're my piece of heaven on earth. Oh, you make it all worth it. You're the reason I keep hitting snooze just to stay next to you. Over and over and over again. I can't wait to do this with you. Over and over and over again. Over and over again. From bacon and coffee to dinner and whiskey, life is a journey as long as you're with me. Small little moments I'll never let go of. Life moves too fast, but I live for the slowness. You're my reason, and my piece of heaven. You're my piece of heaven on earth. Oh, you make it all worth it. You're the reason I keep hitting snooze just to stay next to you. Over and over and over again. I can't wait to do this with you. Over and over and over again. Over and over again.
Sun and Flowers, or Soleil et Fleur, a song called Over and Over. Let me just get a final sketchbook picture from the walk today. I love this part of the walk. There's a tree that it's going to go at some stage. Not today, I hope. But you walk through, it's like a tunnel. And then at the other end, a lower camera angle, you get this beautiful emerge from the darkness shot. 1/2/5, f3.2, 400 ISO, couple of stops under, and there we go. A sketchbook picture. What do you want, pups? Is it still breakfast time for you? Hang on, let's just get out of this. I'm a little bit worried that the tree might one day go creak and then bang. We've had a few go of late, and we've had a lot of rain over the last couple of days, so I'm thinking, let's put that down there, that the branches are weighing very heavy, or heavier, with all the leaves, because of course they've not dropped the leaves yet. There we go, pups. Good boy. One more. No, you don't go in the tin yourself. Now that is out of bounds. Resident dog trainer on the show, Keith, would have something definitely to say about that behaviour. Never mind about training you. He often says, actually, it's not about training the dog, it's about training the owner. Although, Keith, I think I'm not sure who's the owner. I think he owns me. Right, that's it for today. If you can't wait until next Friday and want to walk a little bit further together, then that's what the Extra Mile edition is all about. We're up to number 154. You go the extra mile for me, so I go the extra mile for you. Dewitt returns for 3 more stops, and the end of the week reflection is called A Celebration of Life.
On this week's Extra Mile.
I actually, and I don't mean this in an egotistical way, but I come back because I have shot so much and so many different places. I'll go back into my own work and say, what did you learn? Is this as good as you thought it was? How could this be better? Why does this composition work?
Are you hard on yourself?
Oh, I'm very hard on myself. I mean, I would only be hard on it's not like I can go back and do it again. I can't, but I can learn from it.
The Extra Mile is our Patreon channel where you can help support the show. And so if you'd like to hear a little more from the Photo Walk each week and all those reflections, head to the website, photowalk.show, click Extra Mile or the orange support the show button. Orangey yellow button, Neil, yes, you know the one. And your help keeps us walking week after week. Just a few closing thoughts before the PS. My sincere thanks to you if you are or you're about to become an extra miler. We'll keep building, we've mentioned these words already, but I mean it, this community, this wonderful community of kindness in the photographic and walking world together. A few mentions for those who smooth this voyage. Thank you, Neil Ford, who looks after IT. Andrea Gilpin, who keeps a watchful eye over Instagram, as does Kelly Mitchell for Facebook, and Kelvin Brown, who's at the helm of the Flickr group, and Michael Brennan, who compiles the music of the show onto a Spotify playlist, so you can enjoy it if you like what you hear after the show. Right, a postscript then. And actually, this PS, well, there's a few I could take. I've chosen 2, and they're not from photographers today. Working on the theme of finding what's right with the world. The first one is Anne Frank, who, I know you know your history. You might think, well, I'm not quite sure you're going to find one from Anne for this, are you? Well, yes. Who said, I don't think of all the misery, but of the beauty that still remains. And then Desmond Tutu. I'm taking 2 this week. Desmond Tutu. Hope, he said, is being able to see that there's light despite all the darkness.
What's there to hold in the light of this moon? My mind keeps searching, but my heart decides. Thoughts can be cruel, they're not mine to hold. The space unravels when you let go.
The Photo Walk is a Loading Zone production.